So what do you do if you want to connect to the internet? Is there internet? Is there dial-up? Because it was owned and run by the Communist Party, is there surveillance built in? We really don't know. And then you go inside, and you can find that there's computers and maybe a classroom. And so what you think at first glance can be deceptive. The problem that we had here is that they had such a tight firewall, but their technical person wasn't in. And so no open SSH ports, nothing, and there was no one that could help us. And so we had the technology, and we had to spend some time just doing some explanations with a translator. At another training there as well too, people spend a lot of time working on some of the problems or some of the tools that we showed them. And again, as you can see from the previous picture, some people are old, some people are young, and that's another thing that you have to do as well too, is when you work with organizations, there's a difference in the understanding of the technology. You might be able to teach young people very quickly, but to teach someone that's maybe 70, 80 years old, they have habits that are very hard to change. And so it's quite a challenge that way as well too. As I mentioned earlier, some of our work has been in South America, and one of the two countries that we've done most of our work, one is Colombia. This is a picture of Bogota, a city of 6 million people. And there we worked with different human rights organizations, visited different organizations to see how they were using technology, give them some idea in terms of what suggestions they could implement, but also conducted a couple of workshops. And here you see a picture of kind of the type of people that you find in the classroom, kind of a mixture of men and women. And here you see one of the women participants actually organizing one of the exercises, so just trying to get some feedback with her fellow students as well too. The other thing as well is we also did some work in Peru, just very close to Colombia as well too. There we work with the coordinator of human rights, where there's been a very strong campaign, a very long campaign for many things, but a very priority cause that was going on at the time and still is now, is to extradite Alberto Fujimori, who was the president several years ago, who then left, of Japanese origin, who then left Peru when some of the financial problems were being discovered, went to Japan, said, I'm a Japanese citizen, and because Japan has no extradition treaty with any country, if you're a Japanese citizen, Japan wouldn't give him up to any country. He very recently visited, I think it was Chile, and Chile and Peru do have an extradition treaty, so they're in the process of trying to take this gentleman to trial in Peru. And when we were there, we worked with groups like Amnesty International and others to tell them about some of the security issues and to do some training as well too. So there we had a colleague from Lima. Here there's a picture of her working with someone from Amnesty and showing them how email encryption works and how one of the plugins works for Pegasus Mail. Any questions so far?
Yeah. Have you ever worked with organizations you later found out you shouldn't have, or you would not work with again? Because I'm quite sure that there is a gray area between just opposition work and then, well, other.
That's a very good question, and that was during the process of finding out how we would work and what the type of organizations that we would work with, is how to select partners, but how to deal with that problem. And so one of the things that we did, and the reason why some of our work has taken a long time to do, is that it's really through a network that we try to pick partners. So right now, if an organization approaches us and says, you know, we've heard about you, we're working in In the US, we have this issue with the FBI, can you help us? What we do is we say, we try to get an understanding of what some of their problems are, and then ask groups like Amnesty or Human Rights Watch and others, have they worked with them before? And so it's really through a reference network. What we try to stay away from is, we try to stay with known human rights organizations because they tend to collect information and send it sometimes out of the country as well. So it's really easy to check on the individuals or particularly the organization. So far, we haven't run into an individual or organization that we've actually trained that maybe a year later we say, oh, we made a mistake. But my response to the law enforcement question that we've not been asked yet is, what if law enforcement asks us, well, why are you doing this, and don't you know that this organization is illegal? The one place where this is the case now is in Kazakhstan. The foundation that got us to teach to the network has now been outlawed by the government and all the people expelled. So I believe that if we go back, we might be jailed. When I've been asked in Canada, I basically say, well, we're just teaching the same tools that banks use and the same type of methodologies. So we don't get into very covert. We just use very available tools. And so we haven't run into that. We're just very careful in terms of who we select and who we work with. The picture that you have here, it's a very good question though, and one that anyone who would like to work in this has to really deal with that problem, because if you do select someone, it might also implicate you as well too. So then you can get on lists and not be able to travel. I know of other colleagues who have worked with environmental organizations, and particularly in the US, and they are on the fly list. So whenever they travel in the US, they always get searched now. But this is also the case of university professors that have worked with some things as well too. But a good question. This next photograph is one of Guatemala City, one where we've visited probably about 8 times over the last 4 years, and where privaterra really started most of its work. It was because there was an organization there who found out about some of the work that we were doing in the United States, that knew we spoke Spanish as well, to say, look, we need some training, we do some workshops for security for human rights organizations. Can you come and give a 2-day lecture on just tools and things that you think might be important? You'll see another picture soon, but it's a city that the buildings aren't usually more than 10 stories high, because I think it was in 76 or in 80, there was a very strong earthquake that almost flattened the whole city, so it's very earthquake prone. The current capital, Guatemala City, is the new capital. The previous capital in the 18th century was flattened by an earthquake, Antigua, Guatemala. And so it's one that, it's a very interesting country, one because it has a lot of volcanoes and things like that, so it's very pretty. It has a very sad history because its government was overthrown by one planted by the US, and the level of violence was just, oops. I've lost. There we go. Was just terrible. One of the interesting things about Guatemala is the resilience of the people, and this is one of the things that hearing the talk yesterday in terms of that we've lost the war, that we have to give up, that there's nothing more that we can do. A country like this had a military dictatorship that lasted many years. There were huge atrocities and war crimes committed against the people, but the people did not give up. And when the situation was right, you know, they've been able to do a lot of things. So the one message that the one gets when working in the field is one should not give up. I mean, there are going to be very bad times. There are times when you think that you have nothing left, that you will maybe lose many rights, but there still have to be people that stay engaged and that try to do their best. Getting to one of the workshops that were there, this is one of the first ones. You can see in the background, the very first time we did a workshop there, we did two. So the first one is we tried to be a little bit technical, because the round of conversations that we had with people is that they were technical, that they use computers, and we thought, okay, we're going to explain to them what different type of encryption algorithms are like. We're going to spend a day and a half on theory, on different encryptions, about public key cryptography. And halfway through the first day, we realized that when they said that they were technical, that meant very different than what we thought being technical. And the colleague that was helping me at the time, as you can see in the background, all the notes on the back are all in English. Of course, the people there don't speak English, they speak Spanish. And so it was a big challenge for them to understand what was being said, even though it was being translated, because they would want it in their own language. And one of the first things that we learned very quickly is, in the country, it's better if you can actually do the presentation in their own language. And so maybe spend time, train someone who knows the local language, because they will understand a lot better. And so that was one of the really first lessons that I learned. It may be really intuitive, but this was the case of working with someone from the United States who thought, well, everyone will understand English. That may be different here in Europe, but that was a very quick lesson that was learned as well, too. And going back, what we also learned as well, too, is that it's important to work with individuals, as you saw with the picture with the penguins. It's really important to work with one or two people, to work on the computers that they will work on, not necessarily in workshop. And so here is two individuals. We were showing them a secure database tool, and we just spent some time with them. Afterwards as well, too, as you saw, there's a group of people as well, too. So this is someone that we had trained, showing her colleagues as well, too. What we've also done as well is we've worked with some universities as well to try to bring students or professors to meet and understand how some of the different organizations we work with, what they do. So about almost 3 years ago now, I helped advise a professor from the University of Toronto and 3 of his students, and they filmed a documentary in regards to what the situation is not only in Guatemala but in southern Mexico as well, too. So here, one of the students who now works with the Citizen Lab at the University of Toronto, I think was explaining a particular way to do disk encryption with OpenBSD to some technical Linux experts in Guatemala. So as you can see, it ranges from using presentations outside to really spending some time with people as well, too. You saw some computers there, so when you talk about IT infrastructure, what is it that you find in the field? What is it that you find in countries that you visit that you want to help organizations? So the first thing that we try to do, and we would suggest people to do as well too, is just when you visit an organization, before you start, just tour around the organization and see what they have. And you'll see that in leading organizations, you might have things like this hanging from the wall. There may be, I think this was the case of the organization that has about 100 people, and they were using 8-port hubs. And they said their internet was really slow. And some of the cables that were on the ground were like this. And so the internet might not work. It's just because you might have water come on it. You might have mice eat the cables. And so one of the things to do is, that's a real problem. But if it's a hub, as you know, if someone just connects to the hub, they can just listen to the whole traffic as well, too. So if you're talking about secure communications or security for this organization, do you recommend that they all use VPNs, or do you recommend that they all switch to switches instead? And so that's one of the things that one has to deal with. But again, organizations can have computers, and sometimes the